In this redgamingtech.com review, I'm going to be taking a look at Spec Ops the Line. I have already done a first impressions of this game, but since people are now asking me to start doing full reviews also, I figure this is a good one to start with, as I don't think the first impressions is actually completely fair to the game. When you first start the game, you can almost kind of consider it to be a very typical military shooter, very brown, very cover based, and characters don't seem that interesting, as well as the path is extremely linear. There's no real decision making, so you think to yourself, howdy hum. It's not that long into the game though. It's actually around the point, funnily enough, that I got to in the first impressions, that decisions actually start to come into play. The decisions, however, you make are not necessarily good or evil. For me, particularly, I'm very used to something like BioWare's decision making, where, let's say, you can basically rob someone or you can help someone. It's that simple. There's good and bad. On the other hand, with Spec Ops the Line, it's you can choose to side with person A and kill them, or kill their enemy, or you can choose with person B and kill the other enemy. It's that simple. There is pretty much a lot of self-serving going on, because you basically just want to make it to the end. You just want to survive, is what it comes down to, and you want to accomplish your mission, which by the end of it is no longer really so much of a rescue mission. It's more of a survival mission, and it's down to you to basically piece together pieces of the storyline, which is very good. You feel like you're discovering rather than being led by the particular nose. That's very annoying in most games. You feel like you're not really discovering anything on your own. It feels like, oh hi, look at me, I'm really awesome, and this is what I've managed to write for you guys. No, not really. You don't really feel like that in Spec Ops the Line. You feel like instead things are a lot more subtle. For example, minor spoilers. You can feel free to mute for a few seconds if you want. One example would be that you were in a marketplace and you get to choose between either rescuing a hostage or you can try to rescue the civilians. The hostage is someone you've been looking for a while throughout the story, or you can try to rescue civilians rather than being massacred. But there's no particular winner there. Ultimately, it's not as though you are doing a good. Either way, someone is getting hurt along the way, sometimes even your squad members. And that also means, of course, there's a lot of conflict in your squad. After all, your squad doesn't particularly like some of the decisions you make. They don't particularly agree with something you do. That's not to say that they won't follow you still, because I understand it's a very hard decision, but they will question your orders rather than just blindly following you, which is quite nice. You are basically in Dubai, and it's not a nice version of Dubai as it is now. It's a very bleak looking future where sand is pretty much bombarding the city. Water is becoming a major problem, and for the most part it was thought to be evacuated, but now of course there are warring factions there. So it's a very interesting location, and despite the fact that there's a lot of sand, and this goes on to the graphics, it does not look visually bleak. Some of the locations look very visually impressive. You have lots of colour thanks to lighting, and for example you could be walking through a casino or even a museum and you'll be seeing, like, for example, a T-Rex skeleton on the exhibit, which is very nice. You do see bullet damage on various objects. For example, columns will show chip damage. You'll also, for example, see park benches slowly disintegrate as a hail of bullets hit them, so that's always nice. Gameplay in Spec Ops is really fun, however it does have a few problems which I'm going to get into first. The main one is its decision to have the melee button on the vault button. That's somewhat annoying on occasions, although not always as big a deal as what you could think it could be. But the big one for me is the cover. Sometimes you're not quite sure what's actually going to be cover. Something that looks like it could be used isn't, and so he'll just stand there pretty much. And also sometimes it can be a bit sticky to get out of cover. There is very basic squad control. You can tell your squad to, for example, shoot enemy A instead of B. This is handy, for example, if there is a sniper up high and you don't really have anything to take him out. Or, for example, if a heavy comes on screen who basically can absorb damage like you're giving them candy. And other than that, you don't really have that much control over them, but they do. Oh, and you can order them to flash occasionally, which is quite handy. I'm talking use flash grenades, not treat the battlefield naked, which will probably have about a similar effect, to be honest. Anywho, the fact of the matter is, it does do things well. The AI is not stupid, and I am not just talking about your squad mates here. I am actually talking about the enemy you are fighting. There are a few examples where they are not really paying attention to you, despite the fact that you blow their friend's head off. But generally, they will try to hunt you down if you happen to stick your head out, and they will do things like throw grenades. Rather accurately, may I add. Speaking of grenades, it's actually extremely well done. For example, if it's a sandy area, just as you'd expect, clouds of dust go everywhere. And as I was speaking about snipers earlier, if you happen to have a weapon and the snipers are rather stupidly standing on glass, you can shoot the glass and it will, of course, make the sniper fall. You can shoot windows out, which is pretty handy, as sometimes you get massive amounts of sand that pretty much buries your enemies alive. There are a few other exceptions to the rule, but generally most environments that you would expect to be destructible are indeed destructible. Cover does so disintegrate. For the most part, there are a few exceptions to this. But if, for example, you're standing behind a park bench, don't expect it to be a great protector of yourself. It won't really do that. Now, as you would expect for the fact it's set inside the desert, there is actual dust storms. And when I'm talking about storms, they don't really do it justice. They are absolutely huge and encompass all on the battlefield. And when they do, it looks very visually impressive. It helps to blind not only you, but your enemy. And there is something very satisfying about actually having a firefight inside them. For PC games out there, we can also choose between multiple graphics options. Texture detail can go all the way from very high all the way down to very low. Same for shadow detail, of course. And you can choose between, of course, full screen, so you can play in window. VSync is on and off, and ambient occlusion. To be honest with you, I do wish there were slightly more graphics options, but it's not too bad at all. So with this one, if you want to turn on anti-aliasing and that kind of thing, you're going to have to do it through your graphics card's control panel. Not the biggest deal in the world, but still, there you have it. Overall, I'd highly recommend you try this game out. It's very fun. The storyline is maybe between 6 to 8 hours, depending on how much messing about you're doing. Obviously, if you're deciding to, take a lot of care and explore all the areas, it's probably a bit longer, particularly if you're trying to find out all the intel. On the other hand, if you're just trying to blast through it, it's a lot shorter. Very good game. Very, very, very much recommended. So, with that said, hopefully you guys have enjoyed the review and it helped make your decision upon the game a bit easier. So, take care of yourselves and bye for now.